what really rings into my mind is how important this field is, especially now, since we lost our track. How to manage our environment. Environmental sociology is how us as a society can impact the environment, and at the same time how this changing the environment, especially with this climate change and stuff like that, is putting a stress on us. So it is both ways. We are impacting the environment, and environment is impacting our life. And since 1950s, 1960s, I think the Western civilization has always been about using the environment, exploiting environment from just utilitarian perspective, to use it to our benefit. And then we came to 1960s when we understood that the environment can no longer support us. So what we started doing is to learn from the indigenous knowledge, because the indigenous people somehow they found out how they can cope and live with environment so friendly. So we go to, is there any knowledge, any wisdom among the indigenous people that will feed into this Western body of knowledge so that we finally understand how we can live with the environment in a friendly way, because what we have been doing is not sustainable. And so that is how this concept of environmental sociology, social justice, and all these things, these words that we always hear came to being. And he is one of those people who is specializing with research interest on indigenous knowledge in this environmental sociology, integrating especially the knowledge of the Borana society, the Oromo society. What is it that we learn from this knowledge to feed into the overall body of this Western knowledge in order for our society to live friendly with it. And beyond his research, he's a staunch advocate and social media advocate, activist, and he's earned his Bachelor's of Science degree from University of Istanbul in Turkey, and he is presenting, examining, under the title, Examining the Marginalization of Oromo Groups of Southern Oromia, Ethiopia and Northern Kenya, and I will leave the podium to him. Please welcome him.
Thank you so much, Professor Tekla. And so let me start with our famous greeting in Afan Oromo. Yoya.
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 Again is a banana.
Banana.
So this is a kind of a well-hearted greeting that most of the time we use in our daily greetings, which means Yoya is just to like welcome people with the whole heart. So that's why we say Yoya. Also smiling, which is something like come from our head. So yeah, Dr. Ibrahim is opening my presentation. So let me use this opportunity to thank OSA for giving me this opportunity, especially Dr. Ibrahim, who is someone inspiration not only to me, especially of a generation mainly from marginalized Oromo community of Borana and mostly in the southern Oromia of Ethiopia. Dr. Ibrahim is someone, or maybe he is, if not the only one of the few medical doctor from Borana. So almost, if not everybody, but almost everyone knows the role of Dr. Ibrahim was playing especially as a medical doctor when he was in Borana, serving in community hospitals, and so he is one of personal inspiration for me, and also helping me to also, as OSA president, he also, of course, given me this opportunity. That's why I'd like to thank Dr. Ibrahim, and also for your hospitality, and also, of course, Dr. Abdurrahman, who also welcomed me warmly, and for, of course, his hospitality. And also, let me take this opportunity just to say a few words about Professor Teglab. As you see him here, he introduced me, and he is one of, I think, the few professors from Borana. I don't know, maybe one or maybe two, but I don't remember anyone rose to this status other than him. So he is a real voice, a vocal voice of the marginalized community, especially Oromo, and of our society. And I would like to thank him, and especially for a warm welcome and introduction. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So about my background, I studied in Turkey, Istanbul University. I graduated from Istanbul University in Turkey, considered one of the oldest universities in the world, established in 1454. So I'm graduated from Istanbul University. I studied there, and of course I studied in Turkish. So I can say that I speak a perfect Turkish. Not perfect, but I can, I speak Turkish. So if anyone is interested in that, maybe as my as he maybe talked in, Norwegian, I also can say a few words in Turkish, but I am happy to continue with this. So today I am going to present about especially the Oromo subgroups, and I'm going to little bit talk about a voice for, like, a unique voice, especially from southern Ethiopia and northern Kenya. So my paper is mainly focused on these community marginalized Oromo groups who are dispersed throughout history, marginalized politically, socially, within the Ethiopia and, of course, southern Ethiopia and northern Kenya. And many, not only these are marginalized by the colonial powers of the Ethiopian former colonial power of Abyssinia, but also that of the British colony of northern Kenya, but also marginalized even within the Oromo itself, within the Oromo study itself, this community most of the time. So that is the topic I'm going to discuss today. And when I would like to say a few words about this, I prepared this. Actually, it is a paper that about to be published, and we wrote with this paper with respected Professor Galata Asafa, who is my advisor at the University of Tennessee. So he is a co-writer of this paper, the paper I am presenting. Yeah, sorry. So the rationale about this paper is actually when we were thinking about, writing a paper on this, what in my mind, and also of course in the discussion with Professor Jalata, was about introducing the Oromo groups, mainly dispersed in Kenya and in southern Ethiopia, to the Oromo community. When I say this, some people might think, how would you introduce Oromos to Oromo? People might ask that kind of question. But this is the reality. Sometimes we have to face the reality. There are, if I would not say like the whole Oromo, but I can confidently say 95% of Oromo, they know nothing about these Oromo subgroups, especially the one I'm going to talk about. So that's why our aim was actually to introduce the Oromo to Oromos. Look ironic, but how you introduce Oromos to Oromo, right? Because that was the main idea, and then our publisher actually asking us to change the title. So that's why the original title was actually introducing the Oromo subgroup of southern Ethiopia and northern Kenya. That was the original title. Is to introduce this marginalized community to the Oromo people, to the Oromo intellectuals, right? But later on, because some people, especially our editors, sincerely wanted us to, shift a title a little bit. That's why we changed it to about examining the marginalized Oromo subgroups. So let me start with why this paper, why this topic is important, about the research gap, why we are interested in this, right? Sorry. Yeah, I think slideshow.
I think you're covering your video. I'm watching online. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's perfect now. Thank you so much. So let me talk about why this topic is important actually. What is the reason? So this is about the gap and what are the research gaps that actually inspired us to write this paper. So the scholarship has mainly, when I say scholarship, I'm talking about the Oromo scholarship, the Oromo intellectuals. Mainly focuses on the major Oromo branches, leaving southern Oromia and northern Kenya subgroups underexamined. When I say this, for example, most of the time when you see the Oromo intellectuals, Oromo researchers, and at every level, global level, even within the domestic, within the Ethiopia, within the university, most of the time research works, conferences like this mainly focuses on the Highlander Oromo or the Central Oromo, and most of the time the attention given to the other Oromo subgroups who are undergoing a lot of social, political problems are most of the time, if I will say not neglected, but highly, highly marginalized within the Oromo. That is one research gap that we wanted to actually fill, right? So the paper brings this neglected community of the Oromo, like Borana, Guji, Gabra, Sakuye, Warda, Wada, Orma. These are Oromo groups who are proud of their Oromoness, but who are, in one way or another, highly marginalized and neglected from the Oromo mainstream studies. So most of the time you hear about the Borana, you hear about the Guji, but I hope many of you don't hear about, or maybe don't know about Gabra, about Sakuye, about Orma, about Welda, about Wada. Let me ask you, let me challenge you actually this time. let me ask you, how many of you knows about Sakuye? How many of you know about Orma? How many of you know about water? Just let me ask you, I might challenge you. Can you say a few words about you? Excellent. Especially seeing this from a young student like you is absolutely amazing. So can you say a few words about that? What do you know about water, Sakuye, Werda, any of these groups?
You mentioned Oromo is one of those groups of Southern Oromos who go past Borna.
From my understanding, the Oromo group, for example, they go past Borna and you go end up into Kenya, which is, I believe, North Kenya. The groups are similar in that, I believe the Gabra, like you mentioned, are also in Kenya. I could be mistaken, but my knowledge is mainly from Oromo and then also the Borna that gets between Kenya and Ethiopia.
Great. So there is a hope that new generation is actually realizing this gap. That's really inspiring. Anyone else? Yes? Oh, sorry. I will come back to you.
I think all these groups speak a common language, and also, like he said, the Ormas are all the way pushed from the south to the almost the coastal Mombasa area with the Wate, and they are all marginalized. Sakuye, Gabra, Gare, they are all marginalized in Moyale area, Isiolo area, Waso area. And the Wate also with the Ormas and the Watas are very marginalized actually among this group, within this group itself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ade. Because you are from that particular area, that's why you know about this community. So my challenge is actually for someone who is mainly from the central Oromia.
Yeah, actually, I'm from Central Oromia, from RC. But I know few about the subgroup that you just listed. To my knowledge, Garba lives both in Kenya and Ethiopia. And the Sakuye is mainly concentrated in Isolo. And my knowledge is they are power wielders there, and they are mayors, and they hold many high officials in Isolo. Orma, there is a rumor that Orma is originally migrated from RC 500 years ago, and their Gosa is one of the largest RC's Gosa, which is Karjeda, and now they live in Tana rivers. And I believe Werda and the Wata also lives in Tana river area.
Thank you so much. That's a really good insight about this community. I'm glad that actually it's not, because I was very maybe thinking that a lot of people have no clue about this, and I'm glad to hear that you have some knowledge of these people, and that inspired me, of course. So what we are looking at, of course, we are going to talk a little bit, not in detail, but about all these subgroups. But so, what are important about this? Like what we are looking at, how I am going to do this. So it is in comparative lens. So when we write this paper, it is in a comparative lens, as you can read from here. This paper compares a diverse colonial trajectory that marginalized this community throughout the history. And also, this is for the Abyssinian, Ethiopian colony. Sometimes we consider them as the internal colonialists who forcibly subjugated Oromo into their system, and by eradicating, by terrorizing the Oromo, especially through Naftanya and of course Gabba, where they were used to force Oromo and exploit them and extract their resources, destroy their identity, disperse their language and everything they were taking away from the Oromo. And also, of course, the same is true for a British colony in Northern Kenya. So it is in comparative place to see about the history of this marginalized community. So what is the main question here? What is the main question we are asking here? The main question, as you see, how did colonialism fragmented Oromo institutions and mobility, and how have these communities still preserved identity and continuity, especially for this marginalized community? How they are still proud of, who they are, despite all the challenges, economical, political, cultural, marginalization, but still they have something in common with Oromo. How this happened? So that's the question we are trying to answer. So what is the central argument here? As you can also hear. So Ethiopia and British colonial rule transforming Oromo borderland community from active subject of history into marginalized object of rule by disrupting their indigenous system, their Gada system, restricting mobility, which is a way of life for the Borana, for this community, Gabra, Guji, and Wada, all of them. They have to move from place to place, what we call mobility. That is their way of life. When these colonial settlers came to this area, they limited this mobility. They restricted this mobility, which is their way to, have a pasture, water, grass for their animals, as they are all pastoralists. So when they limited this basic way of life of this community, actually they limited them from the basic life, which disrupted all of their life. So, and also they divided this community into groups, subgroups, and by assimilation, religious, and all form of factors, they disintegrated this community. And so by suppressing cultural institutions mainly, some of them, their language were suppressed, the religions, the religion of the colonialists imposed on them, while their religion, their main religion, was actually demoted or maybe suppressed. So kind of like taking away their identity from them and imposing someone's identity on them. That is how cruel this system was. And these people are still enduring this problem. So we have like 3 times, as you hear, what was happening before colonization, the situation of this community, how it looks like before colonization. When we say colonization, both internal colony of the Abyssinian imperialists and that of the British colony. What about during colonization and also after colonization, as you can see here. So these groups, these Oromo groups and Oromo in general, before colonization, were autonomous society, especially in North Africa. A very dominant community that has their own self-rule indigenous administration, Gada, right? A highly democratic. That's why sometimes we proudly say that even the Westerns, they took this idea of democracy from us, right? Because when you see the essence of this Gada, actually it surprises you. There are a lot of things that you don't see in a Western kind of modern democracy, that these people who had no any form of formal education, how did they craft that kind of system? A highly inclusive system that appreciates women's, children's, animals, even environment. Everything has its rules, everything has, so it is amazing when you see this Gada system. So they destroyed before they had a unique system. So they maintain democratic governance, ritual life, land, pastoral mobility. During colonization, what happened? The conquest, forceful conquest by the colonial, especially the Ethiopian, especially the Amhara-centered colonialists, who were supported by the European during that time, especially Menelik and even before him. So what happened? Border making. They made a false border between this community, between Oromo, in order to disintegrate them, in order to disunite them, and all this, what we call forced demarcation. Forced demarcation. In order to do what? To apply the idea of divide and rule. So they divided all these Oromo, all these units into different sects and facts so that they can fight, they can kill each other, Yeah, so to decline their unity. So let me go quickly so you can already see here. So these are the approach, of course, we applied to this research, and it is a comparative, as I said. The framework we mainly inspired by colonialism, imperialism, and indigenous studies. So let me walk quickly. So pre-colonial, I already a little bit said about this. So the Gada was the foundation for the Oromo. It was a highly inclusive way of administration system that was unique to the Oromo people. And then there was also another important, rituals or what we call Oromo traditional belief or religious. Before the advent of the Christianity and Muslims and all other form of religion, Oromo were practicing these religious called Wakefana, where they believe that there is a might somewhere, but they don't have a particular name to it as a Christianity or this. So they have their own unique religion. And just in order to say one important thing about this Wakefana, in Oromo sense, in a Wakefana, there is no sense of life after death. Oromo don't believe in that. They believe that whatever you do on this world, if it is a punishment, if it is a reward, you just receive it here. There is no idea that things will happen to this afterwards. So that's why they were shaping the community to do best and to be a best possible version of themselves. So they believe that you receive your punishment and reward in this world while you are living. That's why the Oromo Wakefana was unique, and this system of oppression distorted that unique Gada system. I already talked about mobility, which is very important. So let me pass. So when we little bit let me say a few words about this, comparing the Abyssinian colonialist, imperialist rule and that of the, of course, Kenyan or a British colonial rule in both countries, in southern Ethiopia and that of northern Kenya. So they violently incorporated Oromo into their empire. This was mainly in 19th century, we called Menelik II during that time. So they destroyed everything of Oromo, they used it, they stole their resources, they also destroyed their identity and everything, and imposed their own Amara-centered religion, way of life, culture, and everything on them. The same was true for the British assimilation and all these form of things. So same broad Oromo heritage, different colonial regime was in one with British, one with Ethiopia. So political exclusion was the common to all Oromo and especially to this marginalized group. Economic neglect was the common, especially in both colonial era and even by successive Ethiopian rulers. And what was the main resource of the conflict? Pasture. They say resource on competition between the community on grass, on resources, on water, and all this. But it was actually a kind of war, a kind of animosity that orchestrated by the state in order to divide and rule this Oromo community. Cultural marginalization and identity crisis, especially in Kenya. So let me just, do I have more minutes? Do I have more minutes, Professor? Okay, it's not here. So let me say a few words about this community. Actually, this paper is going to be published and in the Oromo Journal of Study, and I hope many of you, especially the youth, might have a chance to read it. So Borana, we all know about the Borana, I'm not going to say. We also Guji, mainly like the case of Guji and Borana is highly also publicized. And Gabra, and also this community in northern Kenya, who are highly marginalized, especially Gabra and the other community in Kenya. So Sakuye and Orma, as our special guest said, are mainly a very marginalized community today in Kenya. Who lives? Sakuye lives around the Isiolo, sorry. So they live with the Borana, but They are today assimilated mainly to the Somali culture, and most of them accepted the Islam. So because of these close intermarriage and separation, they're almost in a verge of losing their identity, even though they speak fluent Afan Oromo. So that's about Sakuya. It's one of the highly marginalized by the Kenya's government today. They don't have any, the government doesn't recognize them formally. They don't have a formal recognition as a Sakuya or as a Oromo. So always they give them a title, or they try to link them to other groups like Somali or maybe other groups. So their original identity is defined by this. So another is Warda, Orma, Wata, and Gari. These are all the original Oromo groups who are today either in identity crisis or either robbed, I would say, of who they are, their identity, their Oromia, and this. Mainly, these people are not only marginalized by the historical factors, as I said, by also the Oromo intellectuals themselves. No Oromo intellectuals, many of them, I would say, never interested in studying this community, in including them into the Oromo study. So that's why we are trying to be their voice. So I would like to say a few words about Gari. These are a very important community. So these are Gari and Gabra, actually. Their identity is one of the highly contested identity. Even though when you see their way of life, the culture, the language, they speak fluent Afan Oromo, or the Borana version. But unfortunately, they deny their Oromoness. They deny it. They mostly for the same, mostly I'm talking about this Gari community. So these are people who live with these Oromo of southern Ethiopia and northern Kenya, with Gabra, Borana, and other related. But today, even some Western writers who are mostly interested in the study of this community, they link them to the Gabra, to the Somali most of the time. Even though they speak fluent Oromo, they have a way of life which is pastoralist, and they have a common culture with Oromo. Most of the time, these academicians, especially Western academicians, anthropologists, link them to the Somali. Also, they deny the Oromo because of the forceful assimilation, intermarriage, and all this. They are now, most of the time, classify themselves as either Somali or maybe other groups, because they have this kind of highly influenced, on them that by others. So they claim Somali identity, and then this is mainly for various reasons, especially for this Gari. They used to have actually a common ground alliance with Oromo, especially during the transitional government in Ethiopia. They had a kind of very close relation with Oromo, OLF, and also what we call Somali Abo. Somali Abo or Oromo Abo, Somali Abo, something like that. So, but they were always shifting, changing, based on political advantage, access to resources, state recognition. Always they have a dish, they based on the opportunity given to them, always they shift. Today they say we are Oromo, the other day they claim the other thing, and finally with the Tigrayan regime, they actually accepted themselves or recognized themselves as a Somali, while they were used to fight with the Abao as Oromo, and they were even representing Oromo constituency during the transitional government. So it is difficult to classify this community, especially of Gari, as purely Oromo or purely Somali. Rather, they represent a frontier pastoral society shaped by long process of cultural interaction and political negotiation between the Oromo and Somali worlds. Understanding this is very important. So when we write this, and this is very controversial, very highly contested, we agreed on one concluding remarks. We said, overall, we argue that these Gari community are integral part of the Oromo nation, who for economic or political reason play an opportunistic game for survival. both in Kenya and Ethiopia. So we have to include them into the Oromo focus-centered institution so that they may also refer back to their history and they may be proud of their Oromoness because of the mainly the neglected. They are today identifying themselves and denying their true Oromoness. So this is all I have, and maybe we have floor for question and answers. Thank you so much.
We really don't have so much time, but I will give opportunity for only one question. For only one question. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think you illustrated a very important fact. So what is your recommendation to mitigate this issue?
Actually, I anticipated this. That's why I'm answering it. So you talk about this and this and this, and then so what is the way forward? That's actually a very important question, and already I was running out of time. That's why I didn't mention this. So when we do this Oromo, how we integrate them into this Oromo study, Oromo centered focus, and all this. This is all about the work of intellectuals like me, like you, and every one of us. Because these people are not willingly doing this because of the imposition, mainly the culture, identity, religion of other people who impose them. They couldn't resist this. And we as Oromo ignore them. We say they are not Oromo, they don't call themselves Oromo, so it's not our business. But that shouldn't be the reason. For example, when you see Somali today, they are claiming all groups that we neglected, and they are isolating them in order to fulfill this great Somalia agenda. But we as Oromo, most of the time, we push other groups, and we only maybe kind of focusing on the some groups, instead of uniting and also giving a voices to these voiceless people, so that we can, have a very strong Oromo community, regardless of the border where they live, who are connected politically and, most importantly, proud of who they are, regardless of the economic, political situation they are in. That is our responsibility. That is my responsibility, and that's what we are going to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think Dr. Ibrahim will be speaking in great lengths about that. But before you go, Halaki, as a duty, I'm giving you this as a duty to unveil the indigenous pastoral Oromo means of adaptation and resilience to climate change. There is a great deal of work that the world wants to hear. How our society is adapting to changing climate, and also how resilient they are. A lot of people want to hear. I want you to work on this area, and I'm presenting this as a duty that we continue doing in this area.
I am much interested in it, especially in creating the Oromo unique knowledge about environment, climate, the scientific one.
Exactly. Thank you so much. So the next presenter is